There's a white powder that costs $3 and kills every insect it touches without using a single molecule of poison. Not repels them, not reduces populations, destroys them physically at the microscopic level through a mechanism insects cannot develop resistance against. One application in the right locations and pest problems disappear for months or years. Ancient Romans stored grain in it for decades without a single weevil infestation. Egyptian granaries protected wheat harvests with it for centuries, before the first chemical pesticide existed. American farmers used it as standard agricultural practice until 1947, when synthetic chemicals became the industry standard. It works through pure physics, microscopic fossilized shells with razor-sharp edges that slice through insect exoskeletons, causing fatal dehydration within 48 hours. No toxicity to mammals, no environmental contamination, no resistance development, no recurring applications. $3 worth of powder that's been sitting in the earth for 100 million years waiting to be scooped up and used. Then someone in a corporate boardroom did the math. The global pesticide industry generates over $70 billion a year. Residential pest control services represent a $20 billion segment. Chemical insecticides sold to consumers account for another $8 billion. The entire business model depends on products that insects eventually develop resistance against, requiring stronger formulations, higher doses, and continuous repurchasing. A pest control solution that works through physical action rather than chemistry never stops working. And costs $3 for a year's supply is not an innovation to celebrate. It's a revenue model to annihilate. They didn't stop using it because it failed. They stopped talking about it because it worked too well. This is the story of Diatomaceous earth, the fossilized pest killer that protected food supplies for thousands of years, and the pesticide industry buried beneath patents and poisons. Welcome to Forbidden Camping. If this knowledge matters to you, the subscribe button and the bell are the best way to make sure it survives. Here we open the vaults the industry locked shut. Now, let me take you back to where this all begins. The year is approximately 2000 BC, and an Egyptian grain storage master is inspecting massive clay vessels filled with harvested wheat. Egypt's survival depends on these grain stores lasting through the dry season and beyond. But there's a problem. Grain weevils, flour beetles, and other storage pests can destroy an entire harvest within months, turning food into worthless dust. The storage master has discovered something remarkable. In certain regions along the Nile, there are deposits of pale, powdery earth that feels almost weightless. When he dusts this powder into the grain vessels before sealing them, the insects never appear. Grain stored without the powder becomes infested within weeks. Grain stored with the powder remains perfect for years. He doesn't understand why it works, but he understands that it saves civilizations from starvation. This practice is documented in Egyptian agricultural records and confirmed by archaeological analysis of ancient grain storage facilities. Residues of diatomaceous earth have been found in storage vessels dating back over 4,000 years. That's a 4,000-year-old pest control protocol describing the exact same material you're about to learn how to use today. And Egypt was not alone. By 500 BC, Roman grain storage facilities across the empire were using similar light-colored earth powders to protect wheat, barley, and other stored foods. The Romans called these deposits terra alba, or white earth, and agricultural manuals from the period describe mixing it into grain before long-term storage. Roman military supply officers documented that grain treated with terra alba showed no insect damage, even after 18 months of storage in Mediterranean heat. In ancient China, similar deposits were used to protect rice stores and silk production facilities from insect pests. Chinese agricultural texts from the Han Dynasty describe using stone powder to eliminate pests from stored grains and prevent damage to silk cocoons. By the Middle Ages, European farmers in regions with diatomaceous earth deposits recognized it as valuable for grain storage and would transport it from quarries to farms specifically for pest control purposes. But the scientific understanding of why it worked didn't emerge until the 19th century. In 1836, German scientist Christian Gottfried Ehrenberg examined samples of this mysterious white earth under a microscope and made an astonishing discovery. The powder wasn't earth at all. It was composed entirely of microscopic fossilized shells. These were the remains of diatoms, single-celled algae that had lived in ancient oceans and lakes millions of years ago. When they died, their silica-based shells accumulated on the ocean floor in massive deposits. Over millions of years, these deposits became fossilized into a substance we now call diatomaceous earth. Ehrenberg published his findings and named the material, but its pest control properties remained primarily in agricultural use, not widely commercialized. Fast forward to the early 20th century. American farmers across the Great Plains and Midwest used diatomaceous earth routinely for grain storage. It was standard practice documented in agricultural extension bulletins from the 1920s and 1930s. Farmers would dust it into grain bins, mix it with stored corn, and apply it to areas where insects were problems. The material was cheap, effective, and required no special equipment. Then, in 1939, Swiss chemist Paul Hermann Müller discovered that DDT killed insects. By 1945, DDT was being mass-produced as a miracle pesticide. Within a decade, the entire agricultural and pest control industry had pivoted to synthetic chemical insecticides. DDT, then organophosphates, then pyrethroids, then neonicotinoids. Each generation of chemicals promised better pest control. And each generation created the same problem: resistance. But here's where the story takes a very dark turn. Before I go further, everything I've revealed barely scratches the surface of what has been hidden from you. I've spent months gathering the survival techniques, the DIY methods, and the suppressed knowledge that industries have buried for decades. All of it is inside the complete forbidden camping vault. The natural mosquito repellent that actually works without DEET. The non-toxic termite treatment that saves your home. The organic garden pest control that outperforms chemicals. The natural flea and tick treatment for pets. The chemical-free bed bug elimination method. The moth prevention technique that protects clothes for years. The ant barrier that costs pennies and lasts months. The fly control system that requires zero poison. And now the complete Diatomaceous Earth Guide with application methods, safety protocols, and pest-specific strategies. 9 pest control guides in one vault. Zero filler, every page designed to eliminate your dependence on toxic chemicals. The link is in the description right now. But stay here, because the physics behind this material is about to make the pesticide industry very uncomfortable. In 1960, researchers at the United States Department of Agriculture began studying why diatomaceous earth killed insects so effectively. What they discovered was elegant in its simplicity. Under an electron microscope, diatomaceous earth reveals a structure of incredible complexity. Each fossilized diatom shell is covered in microscopic pores and razor-sharp edges. The shells are made of silica, essentially glass, and they retain their sharp structure even after millions of years of fossilization. When an insect walks through diatomaceous earth powder, these microscopic glass shards pierce the waxy coating on its exoskeleton. This coating is the insect's primary defense against dehydration. Once compromised, the insect begins losing moisture rapidly. Additionally, the sharp particles physically damage the insect's joints and soft tissues, particularly in the abdomen. For small insects, this is catastrophic. Within 24 to 48 hours, the insect dies from dehydration. The mechanism is purely physical. There is no chemical action, no poison, no toxin. This means insects cannot develop resistance. You cannot evolve a defense against being physically shredded at the microscopic level. A study published in the Journal of Economic Entomology in 1998 tested diatomaceous earth against multiple generations of grain beetles. After 50 generations of exposure, the equivalent of decades of evolution, the beetles showed zero increase in survival rate. Chemical pesticides typically see resistance develop within 5 to 10 generations. A comparative study at Kansas State University in 2006 tested diatomaceous earth against modern chemical insecticides for grain storage protection. The results showed that diatomaceous earth provided equal or superior protection against stored grain pests, with the added benefits of zero toxicity, indefinite effectiveness, and no resistance development. The USDA published extensive research in the 1970s and 1980s confirming that food-grade diatomaceous earth was completely safe for humans and animals, while being lethally effective against insects. The material is chemically inert. It's pure silica, the same compound found in sand and quartz. When consumed by mammals, it passes through the digestive system without being absorbed and causes no harm. In fact, diatomaceous earth is used as an anti-caking agent in animal feed and some human food products. The FDA classifies food-grade diatomaceous earth as generally recognized as safe, grass. Yet despite this mountain of scientific evidence, despite 4,000 years of effective use, despite the complete absence of resistance development, diatomaceous earth virtually disappeared from mainstream pest control recommendations after 1960. Why? Follow the money. If you've made it this far, you already know more about safe pest control than 99% of people spraying poison in their homes. Subscribe and share this with someone who deserves to stop exposing their family to neurotoxins because a corporation needed quarterly profits. Everything the pesticide industry buried is inside the Forbidden Camping Vault. 9 guides, link in the description. Now stay with me because the suppression strategy is about to become crystal clear. The modern pesticide industry operates on a principle of planned obsolescence through resistance. Every chemical insecticide eventually stops working as insects develop genetic resistance. When that happens, the industry releases a new and improved formulation at a higher price point. This creates a perpetual upgrade cycle that generates continuous revenue. Diatomaceous earth cannot participate in this business model because it never stops working. The physical mechanism of action is permanent. An insect cannot evolve thicker exoskeleton armor fast enough to outpace microscopic glass shards, and even if it could, the increased weight would make flight and movement impossible. The global pesticide market generated $71.5 billion in 2022. Residential pest control services added another $20.5 billion. Consumer insecticide products, the sprays, foggers, and baits sold in retail stores, represent $8.2 billion annually. All of that revenue depends on products that stop working, requiring replacement, reformulation, and recurring purchases. A $3 bag of diatomaceous earth that lasts for years and never loses effectiveness is not a product. It's a threat to the entire economic model. So the industry did what industries always do when a superior solution threatens inferior profits. They buried it under marketing budgets, removed it from agricultural extension recommendations, and made sure the average consumer never learned it existed. Now here's what you actually came for: how to use it safely and effectively. This is the part they stopped teaching, so pay attention. First, the critical distinction. There are two types of diatomaceous earth: food grade and industrial grade. You must use food grade diatomaceous earth. Industrial grade is processed at high heat, which changes the crystalline structure and makes it hazardous to breathe. Food grade is processed without heat, remains amorphous silica, and is safe for use around food, people, and pets. Purchase only products labeled food grade or OMRI, listed for organic use. For crawling insects, ants, roaches, silverfish, earwigs, bedbugs, apply a light dusting of diatomaceous earth powder to areas where insects travel, along baseboards, behind appliances, in cracks and crevices, under sinks, in attics and crawl spaces. Use a hand duster or even a plastic squeeze bottle with holes punched in the cap to apply a thin layer. The powder should be barely visible. A heavy pile is less effective than a thin coating. Insects walking through the powder pick up the particles on their bodies and carry them back to nesting areas, spreading the effect. For stored grain and food protection, mix diatomaceous earth directly into stored grains at a ratio of 1 to 2 cups per 50 pounds of grain. This prevents weevils, flower beetles, and other storage pests without affecting the edibility of the grain. The powder can be sifted out before use if desired, though it's completely safe to consume. For garden pests, slugs, snails, beetles, caterpillars, dust diatomaceous earth around the base of plants on leaves when dry and in garden beds. Reapply after rain as water washes it away. The powder damages the soft bodies of slugs and caterpillars on contact. For pet flea control, rub food grade diatomaceous earth into pet fur, focusing on areas where fleas concentrate: neck, base of tail, belly. Leave it on for 24 to 48 hours, then bathe the pet. Dust pet bedding and surrounding areas as well. The powder kills fleas, flea larvae, and flea eggs through the same dehydration mechanism. Safety protocols. Always use food grade diatomaceous earth, never industrial grade. Wear a dust mask when applying large amounts. While non-toxic, any fine dust can irritate lungs if inhaled in quantity. The material is safe around children and pets once settled. Avoid applying in areas with strong air currents that keep the powder airborne continuously. If using indoors, apply in areas that won't be disturbed by foot traffic, which kicks up dust. A homesteader in Idaho has used diatomaceous earth exclusively for pest control for 12 years. No chemical pesticides in his home or on his property. He documented complete elimination of ant problems, elimination of stored grain pests in his root cellar, and effective control of garden slugs and beetles. Total cost over 12 years, approximately $40 for multiple 10-pound bags. Compare that to $200 to $400 per year for professional pest control services, or $150 to $300 annually for consumer pesticide products. The diatomaceous earth cost $3.33 per year and never required reformulation because insects never developed resistance. I need to be honest with you about limitations. Diatomaceous earth only works when dry. Rain washes it away outdoors, requiring reapplication. It works slowly. Insects don't die instantly like with chemical poisons. Death occurs over 24 to 48 hours. It's not effective against flying insects unless they land and walk through treated areas, and it doesn't work through barriers. You need to apply it where insects actually travel. But for the vast majority of common pest problems, ants, roaches, bedbugs, fleas, stored grain pests, garden crawling insects, diatomaceous earth is proven safe, effective, and has 100 million years of fossilized structure backing up its mechanism of action. This knowledge didn't disappear. It was systematically replaced by chemical alternatives that could be patented, reformulated, and sold at premium prices with planned obsolescence built into the molecular structure. Every civilization that stored food without refrigeration understood this fundamental truth. Ancient Egyptians knew it, dusting grain storage vessels with white earth in 2000 BC. Roman agricultural officers knew it, mixing terra alba into military grain supplies. Chinese farmers knew it, protecting rice stores with stone powder for millennia. Medieval European granaries knew it, transporting diatomaceous earth from quarries specifically for storage protection. American farmers knew it, using it as standard practice through the 1940s before synthetic pesticides became available. Your great-grandparents probably knew it, keeping a bag of fossil shell flour in the barn for grain bins and chicken coops. $70 billion in annual pesticide revenue depends on you never making that connection. $20 billion in pest control services depends on you believing that killing insects requires professional application of neurotoxins. $8 billion in consumer insecticide sales depends on you never learning that fossilized algae shells kill pests more effectively than any poison. But this knowledge didn't die. It was waiting in Egyptian grain storage residue analyzed by archaeologists, waiting in Roman agricultural texts describing terra alba, waiting in 1960s USDA research papers proving effectiveness, waiting in Kansas State University studies comparing it to modern chemicals, waiting in the fossilized lake beds where diatoms accumulated for 100 million years. For 4,000 documented years and 100 million years before humans existed, these microscopic glass shells have been death to insects and harmless to everything else. No industry can change physics. They can only make you forget to use it. But forgetting is not permanent. If this vault changed how you look at the pesticide cabinet under your sink, the monthly pest control truck in your neighborhood, and the white powder in ancient lake beds, then subscribe and share this video now. Every share puts a crack in the wall they built around knowledge that protected civilizations. Every subscription keeps this channel opening vaults they thought were sealed forever. The next vault opens soon, and what's inside is the one plant that purifies air better than any filter and costs nothing to grow.